Hello and welcome to this first podcast. I am Andrew and this is my wife,
Kirsty. That's
You
my
nearly
name.
jumped the gun then, didn't you? You nearly jumped
I know.
in. Welcome to the podcast, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, first of all, for clicking on this. There are a lot to choose from.
Yeah,
You've chosen us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thanks for that. In this first episode, we really just wanted to kind of set out our stall, tell you a little bit about us and what you can expect from the podcast kind of going forwards as well. So that's very much what the episode's going to be about today. And I don't know, do you want to start or would you like me to start?
I'll let you start, yeah. This one.
Okay, I'm going to start this one. So, long story short, I myself have been going to Florida for it's 30 years now. 30 years. It is
a long time.
Long time. I first went when I was 11 years old, so you can do the math. I'm 42. And since then, I've just been completely enamoured with Orlando, Florida, the general area. Obviously, the theme parks, so Disney, Universal. Not so much the others, Disney and Universal mainly. There was a time when we used to enjoy SeaWorld and what have you, but to be fair, we've not really gone there for the last several years. So more Disney and Universal, but...
That's kind of a bit how we met though, isn't it? Because we met through work, but we also realised we shared that love of Florida, because I also went, I think, to Florida when I was about 11. But I'm 2 years older.
Yeah, so 30 years experience of travelling to Orlando. We've been many.
You know what? I've lost count.
Many times. And my parents have been homeowners in Orlando, own their own villa, so know a little bit about that side of things as well. Very friendly with some people who own a car hire company, so know a little bit of that about that side of things as well. People who own management companies and things like that. So we've got quite a lot of insider knowledge also, as well as just being general fans. I mean, we do love the theme parks. Been annual pass holders at Disney and Universal since 2016.
The weather, of course, as well.
Oh yeah, the weather. I think that goes without saying at this point. So we definitely do love the theme parks, but there's also a lot of other stuff to do there. But the reason that I started this podcast, and actually the whole YouTube channel that this podcast is a part of, is because basically people were always asking us, because they knew we'd been a lot to Florida.
Get so many questions, wouldn't we?
People would always just tap us up for information. They'd be like, so what's the best things, where's the best place to eat? Should I rent a car? Should I do all this? So the purpose really of this podcast going forwards is going to be to try and provide entertainment, but also information, infotainment, if you will.
So we love it there. We always have since being children ourselves, and now our children love it. It's something that we've passed on to them. They've been going since they were babies. Well, let's just rewind it back a little bit and talk a little bit about I want to talk about our first kind of experiences going to Orlando in Florida. So I first went in 1993. So it was exactly 30 years ago. It was exactly 30 years ago as well, because I went I think I went for Easter actually. So it's a little more than 30 years ago in my case. And what's weird is I think I was there at the same time, because
it would have been your second trip.
That would have been my second trip, because my first trip was 1991.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. Yeah.
But I think, like so many people, we had we'd happened a little bit. We had a little bit of good fortune, and my dad came into a little bit of money through some share options that he had at work, some stock options, and he basically sold his stock option and was going to use the money for a once-in-a-lifetime holiday to Orlando. And we were actually due to go for 3 weeks originally. This was our first, I say originally because there is a background story here. And we were very much looking forward to it. We were very excited. I was 11, which would have made my sister 9. And it was supposed to be a once-off holiday, and we were actually, I remember we were in Manchester city centre, because if you haven't picked up on it by now from the accents, we are from the north of England. And we're in Manchester city centre, we were in a Waterstones bookshop, and we were picking up a Brits Guide to Orlando. Still make them, I believe, Brits Guide to Orlando. Because back in them days, there was no YouTube, there was no podcasts, there were no vloggers. So how else are you going to get your information? You buy a book. So we're going to buy this book and have a read up on it. And we ended up having to divert from that trip to Manchester to go and visit my mum, who was working. My mum used to work in the healthcare service. She's worked for the NHS. And she was working at the time at Salford Royal Hospital, or Hope Hospital. And we actually went to visit her at work because she'd had a little bit of bad news. And that was that the holiday company that we'd actually booked with to go, because we booked a package holiday, had unfortunately gone bust. So you can imagine how that went down. This was like literally a few weeks before we were due to go. And we were then faced with an option. We could either shelve the holiday altogether and wait another year to go. Well, obviously nobody was really loving that idea. Or the other option was to go for only 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks, but stay in an upgraded upgraded resort, which is ultimately what we ended up doing. So we were lucky, we were able to actually rebook and go for the 2 weeks. And like I say, that was our once-in-a-lifetime experience. It probably did us a favour because we ended up staying in a really, really lovely resort hotel very close to Universal Studios. No longer there. It's a Lexus dealership now. But it was called the Delta Orlando Resort. And it was stunning. We'd never been anywhere like it. You know, we remember on the drive there, we also had the obligatory, this will probably happen to you if you're going to Orlando as well, you have the argument in the car.
Oh yeah,
that always sticks with me. Yeah. And then we finally got to the hotel, and somebody met us, like a valet. Now you have to imagine, this is a long time ago. This is 30 years ago, and generally speaking, like hotels and stuff in Britain, they don't have like valets, do they? I mean, maybe some of the swankiest kind of London hotels did, but generally, you know, anywhere we'd been before, you didn't have somebody. And a guy came out to kind of basically get the bags out of the car for us, and my dad was like, "What are you doing?" You know, get out. And we had no idea. We'd never been to anywhere like that before. And he was like, "No. It's all part of like what we do here. We'll take your bags for you. We'll take them up to the room. We'll get you checked in." And it was like, oh, there was just like somebody there to kind of hold your hand and get you settled in. And it was amazing. In hindsight, I think if you spoke to my parents about it, they'd agree that was probably, you know, that was probably the best thing that actually happened to us, was that holiday company going bust, although I didn't feel like it at the time. And I can remember about halfway through the holiday, this once-in-a-lifetime holiday, being sat in the car. I was in the back of the car. It was a white Chrysler Spirit. It was a Dodge Spirit, actually, not a Chrysler Spirit. It was a Dodge Spirit, which looks like it looked like one of the old school American cars, you know, really kind of square. It was white and it had a red velour interior.
I think our first car that we
was
had,
magical. It was magical.
We had the red interior.
Oh, the red interior was a thing of beauty. It was like a burgundy, like a deep maroon burgundy colour.
We had what was it? I can't remember what car it was. It wasn't a Lincoln.
Oh, the Lincolns are fancy.
Yeah, it wasn't a Lincoln, but it was like it was a red car, and it had red velvet.
Oh, red on red.
Like burgundy interior.
A lot of red happening. Anyway.
It was like burgundy, the car, but yeah, I can't remember what car it was, but I know it was like your standard, you know, family car.
So anyway, we were sat inside this car, and I can remember my mum, of all people, who had been probably the least keen on this whole endeavour, looking at my dad in the front of this car and just going like, we have to come back. We have to come back. Like, this was my mum, who was like, she would just take it or leave it. You know, she really wasn't, I don't think she was that heavily invested into this trip. Me and my sister definitely were. We were like all over it. I think my dad was quite keen, But my mum was kind of lukewarm. Well, by a week into the holiday, she was like, we have to come back. I don't care how we do it. We've got to find the money somehow. We have to. We must. And we did. Every single year until I left home. So that was that. So that was my first experience of going to Florida, and obviously you were slightly different, weren't you? You stayed more. Did you stay on the 192 end of things? Because I was near a Universal Studios.
I was just thinking, I remember we probably booked it through a travel agent. I mean, they're not really...
I think you did back then. I think pretty much everybody booked it through a travel agent. I
mean, a travel agent's even a thing anymore. I think I did see one recently, and I was like,
there's still definitely a thing.
I didn't think there were. Am I just making this up? But I feel like there was a travel agent called Lumpolly.
Oh, no, there was, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe that's where we booked it.
We booked with Cosmos.
Thompson.
We booked with Cosmos Holidays.
At Lumpolly. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And we were going with Britannia.
Yeah, we flew Monarch Airlines, also sadly no longer with us.
And it was just so exciting because we were booking it all, and we were staying at Days Inn, Day Suites.
That's on the 192, right?
Old Town. So
okay, so for those of you who don't know, Old Town, because I imagine there's a lot of people listening to this podcast who won't know what that is. Okay, when we refer to places like the 192, basically that's a huge, massive road that runs. Does it run coast to coast?
I know
it certainly goes to Melbourne, which is where one of the TUI flying to Melbourne. Now 192 literally runs from Melbourne Airport 90 miles to into Orlando. So it's a huge road. It's a massive main kind of 6 lane to 8 lane. I think it's 8 lanes in places, and it's massive main road, and lots of things are based off this 192, US 192, or the West Bronson Memorial Highway, I think is its proper name, but everyone just calls it the 192. And Old Town is what it sounds like. It's an old town. Yeah,
lots of shops, kind of entertainment.
Yeah, there's theme park rides there now, fairground rides. Some of those really dubious looking slingshot rides.
They didn't have a lot of that when I was there. I think they had a carousel at one end, and they play old timey music,
like 50s music and stuff all day. It
was kind of cool, really. And you used to get this 5-cent cola.
Oh yeah, you could get it was Coca-Cola for 5 cents.
Yeah,
back in literally back in the 50s, it was 5 cents.
That was really. If you said no, I think it was 25 cents. But if you took the bottle back, they gave
you some money.
They gave you the 20 cents back, so you got your 5 cent Coca-Cola. So I remember staying near there. But I remember when we went, we got delayed because they had to take I think some of the planes were being used. It was the Iraq War.
Oh, it was the Gulf War. So you had to stop to refuel.
So we had to stop to refuel in Newfoundland.
We stopped in Bangor in Maine.
And I remember the pilot, they opened the side door, and 'cause it was all snow and just snow-capped trees, and they opened the door, and we could have a look at the snow.
Yeah.
It was so amazing. But it just made the flight really long because I think it ended up being 13 hours.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting delayed, which meant we got there when it was dark. So that wasn't probably the most helpful on your first trip. And I remember finding someone at the airport who, the representatives. And I remember them saying, you've got to look for the big balloons on the 192. That's the sign for Days in Day Suites, is this big balloon sign.
Right.
And it was dark outside. I remember, we were I don't know, everyone was so tired. When you get there and you're so tired, we ended up, like you said, you end up arguing, and then my dad ended up on the wrong side of the road.
Oh my God, yeah. I'd lie if I said I've nearly done that.
Yeah, he nearly did.
I've nearly done that.
But then we got lost in some kind of neighbourhood, and then my dad pulled up the side of the road, and pulled the window down to a lady that was walking along the pavement, and she's all sheepishly coming to the car because they think they're going to get...
Well, yeah, it can be a bit sketchy these days.
Something bad's going to happen.
Maybe don't do that these days, but back then.
But back then, we pulled, and she was really kind, and she was a bit, but you could see there was children in the car, you know.
Yeah. You're unlikely to be some kind of gangbanger.
Exactly. So she gave us the directions, and we made our way to this place, and I just remember... I cried when I got there. And I think because
tiredness kicking in that. Though,
I was only 11, but I was like, I want to go home. It all seemed a bit weird at night. You know, it was just very, because I'd never been abroad before either. So it was like an alien concept.
Well, again, that was the other thing.
Going away on holiday.
I'd never been on an aeroplane. I'd never been out of the UK until I went to Orlando, and you were the same, weren't you? So it was our first experiences of going abroad as well. So, you know, do it properly. If you're going to do it properly. Go on a long haul flight, you know. But yeah, you will undoubtedly at some point have that kind of most likely have that fractious. I mean, to be fair as well, back then, your
first trip, it usually happens.
But things are a lot better now. If you remember, it used to be a standing joke how bad American signposts were.
Yeah, that's probably why we got lost.
They used to be really small, like literally like this big, and it'd just say like 192 and an arrow. But they'd have it like at the junction. So like as you were kind of going, oh look, there it is, 192, and then it's behind me. I've missed it. So you'd then have to try and find where you could turn around, and everybody used to get really stressed. Nowadays, I would like to just say, so I'm not frightening everybody off from driving. Driving's, honestly, I think it's easier than in the UK these days. The signposts are marvellous. And
roads are bigger.
The roads are huge. They're invariably basically just straight roads. And if you make a mistake, you can literally, and it is literally, Florida is known as the U-turn state because you can just pretty much do a U-turn every
it's weird things like you can turn right at a red light, can't you?
Yeah. I don't want to get too much into that. We'll cover that in a we'll
do things like that.
We'll do a podcast
so different
about driving and whether you should drive or not. We'll cover that in more detail. But yeah, driving, we like to drive when we go, don't we? We tend, like now, our parents
I don't drive.
You don't drive at all. I'll say we like to drive. She likes to be chauffeured. Yeah. I like to drive.
Much happier with that.
So yeah, but it's I think that first time will always be with you. I think it just sticks in your head like glue.
Yeah, it was. I just remember, we were all like, I know I was getting upset, but then you know what? And then I think they went to get some snacks, like some.
I was just going to say, can you remember what the first thing was that you ate when you were in Florida?
Donuts, but we had some like powdered donuts that we got into the apartment, but we didn't really like the look of the apartment when we got in there as well because it was dark.
Yeah,
and we were like,
this is terrible.
We don't really like this, and then everything felt all
that
sunny.
That can be hard, can't it, when you're tired?
Morning, although we did have quite a lot of rain when we first got there, but everything just felt a lot better in the morning, as it usually does. You know,
I think that's the benefit of having a good night's sleep, isn't it? But can you remember what was it just snacks then? Was that your first?
I think we just
meal?
got some snacks because it was just, I think they had a 7-Eleven close by and we could pick up some just things to kind of get us through the night in the morning.
7-Eleven.
And maybe some breakfast things. Ooh. But you know, it was scary that first trip when we were.
I can still remember
younger.
The first thing we had to eat. I can remember getting up to the hotel room and we had the opposite experience. We were just like, this place is amazing. We'd never stayed anywhere so swanky in all our lives. It was beautiful. And like you literally had to have a key card to go in the elevator, and there was literally an armed guard on every floor. You know, there was a doorman, and
it wasn't like that where I was.
No, it was fancy. We wouldn't have picked that. We couldn't afford to stay there for 3 weeks. That's why we only went for 2. But it was the only kind of hotel that had that late availability, probably because it was so expensive.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant, and we went down to had a restaurant at the hotel, and as we went down there, they had a guy playing steel drums in the lobby, and had the people doing limbo and stuff like that. Well, first of all, you'd never seen anything like that. That was just brilliant. And then we went and got some food, and I still remember it. I ordered a burger with waffle fries. I've never had waffle fries before. You know, it sounds mad now, doesn't it? Because like so much from America has made its way over to the UK, but 30 years ago, this stuff just didn't exist. And this burger came out, and it was gigantic. I can still remember because I like my food and I can eat, and I've always been that way. And I had to leave it. I couldn't finish it because it was just wild how big it was, and I just remember thinking, I'm so happy.
Yeah. Well, we discovered Denny's on our first trip.
Oh, the dreaded Denny's.
Yeah, Denny's is like a chain, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a diner.
Yeah, it's a diner. Yeah. But I remember just falling in love with Denny's and like having these every night. We went for our tea there, and we'd have nearly every night. Yeah,
Damn,
we'd have I'd have like a burger in a basket with some fries, and it was just amazing. And then we discovered
I can't remember any of the other food from that holiday, although I'm sure we went to like some brilliant
cherry
places.
Pie, and we bought a cherry pie from Denny's as well.
But I just remember this giant burger, and it was on a brioche bun as well. Back in the days when like we in the UK we didn't do brioche buns.
No. We also discovered a place called Captain Nemo's. We had our breakfast there, I think, every
morning. I never went to Captain Nemo's. We used to go to one called, this was called, would that be on that trip? Yeah, it might have been. There was one on International Drive at the time called the Western Stay, which was like an all-you-can-eat buffet restaurant. Again, didn't have anything like that in the UK at the time. That
breakfast we had there was like $1.99.
Yeah, $1.99 for all you can eat. I mean, this is 30 years ago, to be fair.
How amazing, though.
But like, wow.
Yeah, it was. We just kept going back every day, I think, because it was just the best deal, to eat. And I think when we went as well, it was like a $2 pound, so you got a lot of dollars for your money.
That was a long time ago, though.
I know. Did you ever? Because I remember when we got there the first time, we had we went to one of these presentations the next day.
Yes.
Did you do that?
The welcome meeting.
The welcome meeting, yeah. And I think we had to go to this Western place.
I can't
remember where it was.
Was it Wild Jack's?
I don't think it was that.
The Western show.
It was a place where they did do a Western show.
We went to that one time.
But I remember it was like, I don't know. I don't think they were selling you anything. They were just like telling you about all the trips there were. And I think we may have booked a couple of trips through them.
Yeah. We booked to go water skiing on our first trip, but it got cancelled because of lightning.
Oh, no. Well, we booked to go to Cape Canaveral. Space Centre. So, that was through that, I think. Cause, you used to go to a welcome meeting. And then I think we soon realised... Maybe I can't remember if we went the second time we went, but
you kind of don't need.
You kind of thought you don't really need to do that, but I don't know if they still do stuff like that. I
don't think they do stuff like that anymore. It was very much of the time that wasn't it, because nobody knew what they were doing, so they'd be like, right, because you book a package. I mean, when was the last time we booked a package holiday? Have we ever booked a package holiday?
I don't think we have we?
We tend to book our flights, accommodation, car hire. All separate.
The last package was probably our wedding, but
it probably was.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing back then, though, because I think they gave you loads of tips on like driving and
they'd say like stay on the right side of the road, and this is America. Loads of people expect tips. Lots of people work for tips. We'll do an episode on that as well.
It was probably really helpful, but like you say, there's so much information available to people now in other formats. So. Maybe that's the reason they don't do stuff like that.
Yeah, and in fact, on my YouTube channel, I make kind of videos which are much more like condensed versions. So if you're struggling for time and you're thinking to yourself, I really haven't got time to listen to these two waffle for 30, 40 minutes. Just whittling on about Orlando. Go and check out some of the videos on the channel, because there's lots on there that just kind of get right down to it. But for those of you who do want to hear more personal experiences and where we really get into like the nooks and crannies of everything and really explore it in detail, this is going to be a podcast for you. We're gonna do lots of fun stuff as well. We're going to be talking about things like we'll cover theme parks for sure. Got some good ideas to do with that, but lots of information and hopefully a good time.
Yeah, and you can maybe reminisce on your Florida holidays as well if you've not. If you have been before,
if you've been, leave us a comment below this podcast, because if you make it to this stage of the podcast now,
tell us how many times you've been.
Have you been?
Yeah.
And if you have, how many times have you been?
Because this will be.
When did you first go? I'd like to know when you first went.
Because this is the proof now of how many people are out there who just had that. I've got the Florida bug, and they've just had to go back again.
Yeah.
So,
and are still listening and watching to podcasts and YouTube videos, even though they might have been 20 times.
Yeah,
because I do it
that much.
I do it, even though I don't want to say I've experienced everything, but we've been to every theme park. Like I say, we've been annual pass holders at many of them for years. We've stayed in hotels, we've stayed in villas, and we've driven and we've not driven, and we've stayed at Disney and Offsite and International Drive and Universal Studio. We've stayed at.
Yeah, I've never stayed at International Drive.
You've never stayed on International Drive?
No, we were always in Kissimmee. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a revelation.
That's a revelation, and it's also a subject for another podcast because for those of you who don't know, very briefly, Universal and Disney, not next door to each other.
No. Different areas.
Completely different areas.
Yeah.
We'll cover that. Yeah. That's his own podcast,
yeah,
for
they're
sure.
Quite away from each other. But what would you say? I mean, did you cry when you got back that first time? Because I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do. I mean, I was a kid as well. But I just remember having such a good time that
I can remember this.
The thought of being back home and not going back. It was awful. Yeah,
it is. It's a funny. And if you haven't been yet and you're watching this or listening to this, and you're thinking, these two are completely over the top. We're not, honestly. Everyone you speak to, it is very, very, very rare that you'll come across somebody who went to Orlando, one and done, mate. Never going back.
It does happen.
It does happen.
Sometimes people find it too busy because they feel like they need a holiday when they come back from a holiday in Florida.
If you are planning to go there and put your feet up, Orlando,
you can do that. You can do that maybe at places like
the beach.
You can do it anywhere. You can go to Orlando and not go to the theme park.
Well, my mum and dad have just been for 2 weeks, and they went to Epcot one day.
So I must admit, I've even thought of that. There's been times when we've been and we haven't done the theme parks as much as other times.
Yeah.
And I had a holiday with my family years ago where we only went to the coast. So we just kind of drove right past all the theme park stuff. And I remember being a little bit sad.
I was going to say, I think that would feel weird. That would feel weird to me.
But it was a good holiday though. We stayed. That's where we discovered Siesta Key, our favourite beach destination. It. So
Siesta Key.
Yeah, that was a great holiday. It was different, but I enjoyed it all the same because I love Florida. So yeah, I'll take anything in Florida.
We'll take what we can get.
Yeah, we'll take what we can get.
So I think that's going to do it for this first entry into the podcast diary. It was a bit rambly. Not going to lie, but that'll happen to you when you've got so many memories that you want to kind of share and so much information that we want to get out, but I'm saving it. I'm saving it for future episodes.
Yeah.
Make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss those if you're listening on YouTube there. And we'll see you next time.